And Napoleon Hill wrote, in Think and Grow Rich, that there's the 6 ghosts of fear, and I'm going to just pop open this chapter because it is how to outwit the 6 ghosts of fear. And then he wrote an entire another book called Outwitting the Devil that's really based on this chapter on outwitting these 6 ghosts of fear, and how do we overcome real, these thoughts sometimes that come to us aren't always from us. And sometimes, we've got the chapter on intuition, the 6th sense. We're picking up information from all over the place. Sometimes we don't even know what it is, where it's coming from. We're not our thoughts. I think it's just a powerful thing to understand, is that when you realize that just because you think a thought doesn't mean it's yours. And just because you think a thought doesn't mean that you have to own it. Own the thoughts, or replace those thoughts that bring you down with something that brings you up. And the 6 ghosts of fear are, I'm going to just read them right out of here. It's the fear of poverty, the fear of criticism, the fear of ill health, the fear of loss of love of someone, the fear of old age, and the fear of death. And you will find that I'm not sure whether or not it's because women give birth to children that they're just really not afraid of death as much as men are. That's not one of our top ones, like to be afraid of death is, and I might be over simplifying things, and maybe women get a fear of death like as they move, get older. However, I know that some young men have that fear very young. Fear of old age is kind of is not always a woman's first problem either. But the fear of poverty, the fear of criticism, and the fear of loss of love totally overwhelm women's consciousness, and will really. And I could be wrong about who you are and what fears are the ones that kind of stop you, those invisible fences. But think about those 6 fears, and which fear do you think is the one that has the most impact on you, or the one that you find that maybe you've struggled with in the past, if you don't want to affirm that you are struggling with it now, or that you just have to be consciously aware of? And I'd really love to know, from you guys, are you aware of what fear you have that may stop you when you are moving forward? We just talked about this on the Empire Building Hangout on Monday, but this is a great follow-up to this discussion on which fear do you kind of claim. Anyone want to raise their hand and say, I want to get Crystal?
I'll jump in. My leading fear is the fear of poverty, and it's been because the other ones, I can see here and there, but that's the one that has been in my life. Let's say it's. That's funny. The word crippling just came up, which is a pretty big word, right? Anyway, that's the one that has definitely held me back before, and that's the one I sort of dance the most with, I guess is a good way to say it. Yeah. And it's amazing how, because there have definitely been some times in my life where people talk about living paycheck to paycheck. No, there have definitely been times in my life where I lived like miracle to miracle. I mean,
right.
I'm so grateful to be here right now. But I had to. That fear was literally strangling me for a long time, and I was so I had so put my faith in poverty unknowingly,
right, that
I couldn't. I was holding myself in it. I could not move forward. I couldn't get out of it. I couldn't see. I couldn't even imagine what it would be like to live, anything different. And so finally, with the help of this book, the help of a number of things that happened in my life, all kind of around the same time, oh my gosh, you know, I was finally able to I started just seeing things differently, having a whole new conversation in my awareness, hanging out with different people, having different conversations. I mean, my whole awareness shifted, and you know, I won't say I have it mastered. I definitely won't say that, but I will say I have a much greater sense of peace now, and a greater sense of faith in how much abundance there really, really is in our world. And I just checked myself because I said really, really, which is a conscious language thing. I'm like, okay, that gives me something to explore. So, yeah, that was mine, and I can definitely see the rest of them in other people too. And I do also think it's really interesting that fear of criticism and fear of loss of love of someone can actually sort of go hand in hand, because that loss of love of someone can be very much an approval thing. So just thought I'd throw that in there too.
Robin, do you have some thoughts that you wanted to add? I'd love to hear what you know, if you've kind of, do you know which fear is your most, I don't know, the greatest one for you?
Yeah, I remember thinking that it was the fear of poverty, but it truly is the fear of criticism that does live underneath it. And I consciously notice that and work on looking at distancing the conscious language things, but I am transforming that.
Yeah.
You know, even during this hangout.
Yeah, it's so, I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the thought, I notice this thought is running through me, you know, questioning, let's say, what I shared. And the antidote for that, which is, you know, that faith being the antidote, is I appreciate myself for sharing.
Yeah.
Just appreciating myself for offering myself and for being willing, for trusting, and trusting that is going to open more of what I do want. So it's working inside of that fear of criticism with an opening.
Wonderful. I love that awareness, and I love it how we can be in conversation around these topics or around anything very deep, and in the middle of it feel our own personal transformation. And sometimes it's wiggly, you know, like sometimes it makes us wiggle in our seat, like, oh, that's kind of, am I ready to share? Am I ready to be, you know, to be vulnerable about this? I'm going to tell you the thing that, and I'm sure that the fear of criticism is my most, you know, it's probably the top of one of my most, you know, the thing that gets me. And that my antidote for that is to have faith and trust in myself, and just kind of, this is my thing, is just show up. You know, I'm showing up. You know, people are going to criticize me, but when I'm in it, like when I'm showing up for me personally, when I'm showing up and sharing of myself, then I don't feel it in the middle of it. But for me, it's always this, like, way beforehand. It's like that getting ready to do the thing. And persistence, which we'll talk about in a later chapter in Think and Grow Rich, has been, for me, something that gives me a lot of faith. Like, oh, wow, yeah, I can keep persisting, and I can keep showing up, and that gives me a lot of faith and trust in myself and my ability to meet my challenges. And just kind of thought that I would share that, because how do we deal with things? And we'll move on to the auto-suggestion being one of them after we hear from Andrea. And if you're watching from the outside, like Todd is watching from the outside, hi Todd. And I know we have, this is NWBD is watching or is showing up. If you're watching from the outside and you want to share what your biggest fear is, what do you think the ghost that haunts you, which fear haunts you the most? would love to know, because this is kind of a time to be, I don't know, open enough. And once you name it, it kind of loses a lot of energy. I think it's a very interesting thing to be able to name it, be vulnerable enough to say, yeah, I think I kind of got this one. And all of a sudden the energy around it that holds it, that gives it the power over us, kind of goes away. So give yourself the gift of claiming or naming it, so you can kind of take back the power from it by naming it.
So my fear is the last 11 years since I lost my husband has been the fear of the loss of the love of my kids, due to kind of went a bit of hand in hand with the fear of poverty. So as the mom and having to do it now on my own, and as they've grown up and gotten older, my fear of letting them down, of not maybe being that mother that, that whole, I was criticizing myself the whole way through it. So maybe it's all three for me. The fear of poverty, the fear of the loss of the loved one, and the fear of criticism. And that ran me for quite a long time. And I don't know, Dawn, if you remember when I had reached out to you last year when I was going through some not good stuff. And that was, the having to look my kids in the face and say, this is where I have brought us to, because it wasn't them, right? And it was me, and it was my crazy, chaotic crap in between my two ears that led us. And I was so afraid that I would lose that love. And I appreciate having gone through all of that now, because I can see I didn't. And they didn't turn their back, and they didn't do all those things that was going in my head telling me that that's what was going to happen. I was going to lose the love and the respect of my son and of my daughter. And it just, you're right. Speak it. Set yourself free. Just say it and stop giving that stuff the power.
Yeah. So. You just hit on something really, really powerful. And I'm really happy, I'm feeling choked up about it, because I really don't care who sees me feeling choked up about it, but I'm feeling the immense truth of how important it is for us to meet life where we are, and be so honest with the people that we love about the things that we think we're hiding from them. So all that fear about, thinking that they'll stop loving us, or feeling that, you're going to lose something. You're not going to lose yourself by being authentically honest with people, and standing in your truth and saying, this is what's going on. You're not going to lose anything. You can only gain. And you cannot know that until you go through it. You really can't. Andrea, is that true? You really can. It's just theory and fairy dust until you actually confront or share something with somebody that you love in a way like that you're talking about.
It's true. And the acronym for fear about false evidence appearing real? Well, because I, as you were saying about being choked up, I'm just, there's some tears, and I'm just releasing some stuff, because it's true. It was running me. I was allowing it, but it was taking me on this freaking crazy ride. Crazy ride. The sleepless nights, that internal panic mode. Because the thought of my kids, feeling like the shit that was in my head, I thought they were going to speak out loud. And that was so wrong of me, because I was taking my stuff and I was throwing it on them. And it's just so wrong for us to do as a parent, as a friend, as a spouse, as an individual, to do that to other people, to project our crap onto them. And I was even thinking this last night, once I did just come clean with my chaos and my stuff, it opened up everything to happen, the embracing for giving my son that space to speak his truth about how he felt, for my daughter to speak her truth, how she felt, and for us to be able to come together as our family. So if anybody, is on this hangout, is listening, and is maybe going through this, just really honestly, just speak it, because that saying, I don't know if it's a biblical saying or from where it comes from, that truth will set us free. Our truth really does set us free. So whoever is living in those little shackles that I had on myself, set yourself free and just speak it.
And once you go through that, you are so transformed, you can never go back. Do you also think that that's true? I have found that to be true for me. But it's like night and day. It's almost as if that's the thing that wakes up your higher self, is being able to speak your truth. And you are so right. You give everybody who you're speaking to permission to speak their truth in a loving and compassionate way. And I think that this goes perfectly back to trusting that all is going to be well, trusting that you can have faith in yourself, that even if what you're sharing feels uncomfortable, or if that you're not, sometimes we think, because of the fear of criticism, the fear of loss of love, we are acting and we're saying things in response to what we think the other person's going to respond, how they're going to respond, and it's all made up stuff. I mean, because this was my experience. But maybe that could even be a further conversation on another hangout, because I just feel something that just struck a lot of chords here, and I'm thinking of the sadness and the depression that Sharon Lechter talks about. There's a study, and it shows that way more women suffer from depression than men do. This has got to be a part of it, because we're monitoring or thinking of what we're saying based on what we think how we think other people will react or respond, which is really, again, all made up stuff. So
yes, and there's so many layers to this.
Yeah.
So it is meant for a whole other hangout, because the layers are so deep with this.
Yeah. So let's kind of just move back into this feeling of having faith in ourselves, that we can speak our truth, we can share our desires, we can share look at our fears and be open, and know that we know and trust, like Robin mentioned, no, maybe you were mentioning earlier, Andrea, that knowing is that other word that comes along with this.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing that where you're going, the desire that you have, because as we're talking about Think and Grow Rich, it starts with the desire. And knowing that what you want will certainly manifest. You just have to trust that everything that you're doing is moving forward, and that the universe is conspiring for you, that God wants God wants to give you what you want. I mean, that's my belief. I believe that. What I want wants me. So I wake up in the morning and I think of that. What do I want wants me. And then I think of, what do I want? That's kind of like the fun, okay, so what do I want? And starting my days like that is kind of like fun and playful. And I'm embracing a much more playful life existence than ever before. So you'll feel that a lot from me kind of in the coming months, because I'm unleashing some kind of inner funness. But when we're thinking about like overcoming this, and we'll talk about fear of loss of love with your family, fear of poverty with moving forward. And what all those fears do is they, secretly, they stop you from taking action. They stop those conversations from happening. They stop sales conversations from happening. Am I right? Yeah? Anyone? Your thumbs up?
2 thumbs up.
They stop us from having sales conversations. They stop us from letting people know what we offer. They stop us from asking for referrals. I mean, like all of this stuff. I mean, like all the good basic business principles, like these fears will stop us from. So how do we overwrite that, create more faith, and, move ourselves forward and move through the idea, or move through what feels like stuck in action, and move into a place of abundant, joyful action, inspired action, aligned action, trusting action that is all-knowing that what you're doing is moving you into a state of growth. And I say growth because I believe that you think and grow rich.